You know, it's hard to remember a time when the adage "Sonic has too many friends" didn't exist. Mainly because it's been around since the days of the franchise's second game. Believe it or not, there were people who didn't like the idea of a little buddy following Sonic around. Of course, it was a small minority, but they did exist. Thankfully, the overwhelming majority, myself included, welcomed this furry two-tailed fox with open arms. I mean, I did until I played Sonic the Fighters, of course. Why are you so cheap, Tails? Why are you so cheap, Tails? With the successful addition of Tails to the series, Sega doubled down on this idea by introducing a new character in the following mainline game, with of course Sonic 3 adding Knuckles to the roster. And don't worry, I haven't forgotten that technically before Knuckles and even Tails, there was Amy Rose and Metal Sonic in Sonic CD. But you see, just because Sonic was getting ready to jump to that fabled third dimension after the series climax in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, doesn't mean that that's where 2D Sonic ended. There was one outlier, one extra traditional classic Sonic game on the elusive 32X add-on, Knuckles Chaotix, adding another 4 new characters to the quickly expanding cast of Sonic buddies. I mean 6 if you want to count Heavy and Bomb, but I mean they're not in the title screen, you can only select one at a time, and yeah, they're not main characters. And yes, cool your jets, I know technically Mighty's debut as a playable character was in the Sega Sonic arcade game, but this was before the internet existed, and for a lot of fans such as myself, the only Sonic mediums were the games, the comics and the cartoons. So to a lot of people, Mighty was more or less a new character introduced in Knuckles Chaotix. Man, I still remember the first time I ever saw any of these characters. It was this page in issue 53 of Sonic the Comic. And look at these dudes, they are cool as f***. All of them are so well designed, looking completely unique but perfectly in fitting with both the animal they're based on and the art style that Sonic is synonymous with. That is something I will greatly praise Sega for. Take any Sonic buddy and just based off of their design, I could see them all being the faces of their own franchise in some alternate reality where Sonic doesn't exist. Man, imagine a world that Sonic doesn't exist in, and I've made myself sad. But wipe those tears away from your eyes, dear viewer, because we finally arrived at the subject of this video. The rambunctious rainbow-tinted The rambunctious rainbow-tinted radical rap... The rambunctious rainbow-tinted... The rambunctious rainbow-tinted This was not a good idea. The rambunctious rainbow-tinted radical reptilian rapscallion, Espio, the comedian. Oh my god. So I guess you're probably thinking to yourself, was that entire preamble about Sonic's buddies and how they were introduced into the series really necessary if this video is about Espio? And the answer is yes! Because after I've gushed over this character, I want to ask you, the viewer, some pretty interesting questions pertaining to Espio that I'm very curious to hear other people's opinions on when we come full circle later on. By the way, you may have noticed from the visuals so far, but I'm actually specifically talking about Classic Espio in this video. Like yes, modern Espio is cool and all. I mean, come on, he's a stoic ninja detective that can turn invisible and throw Death Stars. Of course I like him, but I have more of a personal history with Classic Espio, so I had this version in mind when I started writing this script. Though, to be fair, a lot of what I'm about to say could also be applied to modern Espio. Truth be told, this actually started off as a Why I Love Classic Espio script to try and stay in keeping with my previous Sandopolis video, but after I finished writing it, I realised that I ended up talking more about Espio's design and use throughout the series. But anyway, let's get down to business. Why do I love Espio? Well, because I mean, look at him. He's so damn cool. I feel like I'm not really treading new ground here. He just looks cool as f***. He's the first character to not have a traditional black bean Sonic nose, or any nose for that matter. Something I noticed early on as a kid is that every Sonic character's abilities was built into their design. Sonic's whole deal, apart from being, you know, fast, was curling into a buzzsaw looking ball to attack his enemies. The ability was built into his design. Tails' most distinguishable feature is immortality. I jest, of course, it's obviously his tails, but when this dual-tailed fox isn't leaving the Grim Reaper on red, he's flying around the level, and how does he do that? With his tails. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but Knuckles, a character that's known for digging and climbing in environments, has a design that emphasises his his knuckles. I know, you heard it here first. That is the kind of expert analysis you can only get here at Twisted Blade Gaming. Don't forget to scrub side peas and fanku.
Stop going off on tangents to talk about Espio!
Okay. Well then, let's see what we can glean about Espio and figure out how his abilities play a part in his design. In his classic incarnation, he has two unique abilities for us to work with. He can change colour like the real animal.
Oh, okay, that sounds cool. Not really an in-game ability per se, but still looks cool.
And two, can run up walls and ceilings.
Ah, now we're talking. So he must have some interesting design, right, for his feet? Some kind of logical design that explains how he uses this ability?
No, the boy just has shoes like everyone else.
Oh. Okay, but then how does that work? Can he grip the walls through the soles of his shoes? I don't understand. What about those bands around his arms? Do they serve any purpose?
No, but they look cool.
Ah, well, those spikes on his back must make his spin attack effective, right?
Oh, no. He spins vertically when he attacks, but it looks really cool.
Well, then surely that eye-catching bright yellow horn on his head must provide some use. Maybe smash through walls or use it to headbutt badniks.
All this goes to prove that even though Espio seemed to buck the trend when it came to how Sonic characters were designed, that doesn't mean his design is bad. It really doesn't matter too much about how this design was created. What matters is, does it look good and do I want to play as him? And the answer is yes and yes. And I can promise you, as soon as I was able to get my hands on this game, which definitely wasn't an emulator for realsies guys, he and Mighty were my go-to to test out this game with first. While I was unable to play as Espio in a classic game until I was an adult, that doesn't mean that his character had no influence on me growing up. Espio was my first exposure to the reptile species. I loved this character so much that, of course, I went and researched real chameleons, and the more I learned, the more I loved it. Espio started my love for reptiles. I wanted a chameleon so badly as a kid you wouldn't even believe, and while I decided eventually to not get a chameleon, I did get a reptilian pet as an adult. A bearded dragon called Reaper, or Reaps for short, though this name very nearly ended up being, well, you guessed it, Espio. I love this little guy. He was a wonderful companion that I'll remember and cherish forever, and honestly, I know this kind of got heavy and personal very quickly, but I had to say all this because I don't know if all these memories I hold so dear would have even happened if I hadn't been introduced to Espio. So on a personal, sentimental, real life level, Espio means a lot to me. But let's get back to the games. Espio is so damn fun to play as in Knuckles Chaotix. The colour changing really is eye-catching and slick as fuck in his idle animation. Look at him crouching down and looking around while changing colour. He knows he's cool. He knows how cool he is. Espio be looking at Hypersonic like, bitch please. Just awesome. The wall and ceiling running is so satisfying, almost game breaking in a way, because you can just circumvent a lot of the platforming by just running up the wall. It'll never not be fun to blast through a platforming section by just sprinting vertically up a wall. I imagine the badniks in the zone are looking at Espio like... But yeah, playing as Espio is a blast. Or at least it would be if it wasn't for the rubber band mechanic that this whole game is ironically, figuratively and literally tethered to. But I'm not going to talk about that in this video because honestly, I wouldn't mind making a dedicated video for this game in the future, but I have to mention the rubber band mechanic because it really does stand in the way of Espio's full potential. Imagine a more traditional Sonic game but tailored to Espio and his wall running abilities. Just think of the interesting platforming and gameplay scenarios that could have been had the game been built around it. Imagine the Death Egg's anti-gravity mechanic but you can still run on the walls and floor. It's funny because some of the least popular classic Sonic levels would greatly benefit from Espio's ability. It would make Wacky Workbench and Sonic CD way more fun and interesting to play. That whole level's objective is to stay away from the floor, which would be much easier to do if you were playing as Espio. The only other way I could see myself enjoying Wacky Workbench is if there was a mod that made it so that every time you bounced off the floor, instead of playing that buzz sound, it plays that ah meme. Somebody please make that mod. Or how about Sandopolis Zone? Yeah, that's right, I'm talking about Sandopolis Zone again. Shout out to my Sandopolis crew, where you at? But yeah, all the sand rising sections in Act 2, imagine being able to run up all the walls and ceilings as Espio. Tell me that would not be fun. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm very grateful that we got Mighty and Ray in Sonic Mania, but I would have loved Classic Espio and his abilities. Oh well, maybe Sonic Origins will include him as a playable character for DLC or something.
You serious?
Sadly, Classic Espio would only appear once in a 2D game, which is a real shame because I would have loved to have seen what this version of Espio was truly capable of. But this brings us all the way back to that question I promised at the start of the video. If Espio had debuted in Knuckles Chaotix alone, like no Mighty, Charmy, Vector, same game but just Knuckles and Espio, would we have seen him used more in the series later on? Did having to share the spotlight with Vector, Charmy and to a lesser extent Mighty in a very obscure game diminish the impact he had as a whole? Or maybe it would have gone the other way, where Sega would have associated the game being a flop with Espio and banished him to the realm of obscurity? Or do you think that Espio is currently where he was always meant to end up? A side character and nothing more? Has it helped or hindered him being a part of the Chaotix crew? Tell me what you think in the comments, I'd love to hear from you.
I'm a poet and didn't even know I was rhyming those words, but it happened anyway.
Of course, Espio did survive the totally smooth, harmonious and uneventful transition to 3D, being playable a couple of times in the mainline games since his Chaotic days, in Sonic Heroes, which Premier Remy rightfully claims is goated, and Sonic Rivals, but I mean that's it. And even then, Espio isn't the focus, the levels aren't built around his abilities, he essentially acts as a skin swap for Sonic. I guess this idea of Sonic's friends being underused isn't exclusive to Espio. You could say that for most of the Sonic characters really. There's so much more I could talk about with Espio. I haven't even mentioned his personality or character traits or what his relationships are like with the rest of the crew and Sonic's extended cast. And don't get me wrong, I'm really glad he didn't end up with the same fate as my boy Mighty, but man, I really wish we could have spent more time with this version of Espio. In my opinion, the most underappreciated and underutilized Sonic character around. Well, thank you for watching this video. I was truly surprised and blown away at the positive responses I got from my Sandopolis video, and I really enjoyed everybody's feedback, whether they agreed or disagreed with me. The Sandopolis video got me thinking of what other Sonic subjects would I like to talk about, and it turns out there's loads of other topics I want to cover, so there is more content on the way. I eventually want to make videos about some other game franchises that I love, like Resident Evil and Pokemon, but as I mentioned a second ago, loads of Sonic stuff in the works, so stay tuned. Also, you may have noticed that the music I had playing throughout the main portion of the video was some Knuckles Chaotix tracks remixed by, well, yours truly. I already had them made, so I figured, you know, why not use them, maybe give the video a little more authenticity or something, but let me know if they were too distracting and you'd rather I just use the original game music instead, like I have done in previous videos. So yeah, let me know about that. If you enjoyed this video, then please consider liking and subscribe to the usual YouTube bullshit, but honestly the positive feedback does tell me that you want more videos. We're about to hit 100 subscribers, which we may already have done by the time this video goes out, but yeah, that's crazy. So thank you so much for everyone that has subscribed, and if you haven't, I hope you will consider doing so. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.